Welcome to Personal Finance Unit 1. This is your online instructor, Diana Block. And here is a picture. This is me. I was at the tube station in London, England. My mom and a friend of mine and myself, we all went over to London in November of 2015, and just for fun. And we decided to take the tube and try to find Buckingham Palace, so we got our tube maps out, and this was in the tube station where apparently we got off at the right place. So anyway, that's out of the way. That's who I am. We're going to talk about personal finance, and this is going to be a 6-week course, so we're going to have to get right to it. And I want to talk about time value of money. Time value of money is a very important concept in finance, because one thing that we all know, whether we realize it or not, we say it all the time: time is money. And it really is, because with time we have the ability to do things with our money that will allow it to grow. So we want to always have our money sooner rather than later, because we want it to grow over time. And what we've got here is a chart, this timeline that kind of gives you a demonstration that if you have money now, you have a certain amount of money at year 0, which is now, and at year 1, year 2, or year 3, if you put that into some sort of investment that pays you interest, then at the end of that period, it'll be more than the $10,000 we started with. So instead of waiting and getting $10,000 3 years from now, we'd always rather have it today, because today we can invest it, and then 3 years from now it will have grown. So part of financial management is calculating what are these values of time, time value of money. What is the value of time? What is it worth to us to have money today versus tomorrow? And in your textbook, you're going to see a couple of different ways to complete these calculations. You're going to see formulas like you see here. Future value of at a certain period equals the present value times 1 plus the rate raised to the number of periods. Yeah, that was a mouthful, right? So we could use those, though. We could use those formulas, and we can plug in the present values and the interest rates and the number of periods, and we can calculate with pencil and paper what the value of an amount is after a certain time, what its future value is. The other thing that we can do is we could use a table like this. You have a table like this in the appendix of your book. It's readily available over the internet. And you can easily get a chart like this anywhere, and it gives you factors that you can use to make a quicker calculation than using this formula. So for example, if your money's going to grow at 6%, you would go over to the 6% column, and then you'll go down to the number of periods that you're going to leave it in that investment. And so if it was 10 periods at 6%, we see a factor there of 1.791. What you could do with that is, instead of using this section of the formula, you can just multiply the present value times that factor from the table. So it's still using the formula, it's just a shorter version of how to use the formula by calculating that factor part out for you. But even still, as you can tell, that's a long, drawn-out process. Nowadays, there is an easier way that I recommend for getting time value information, and that is to just use Excel. So Excel has some functions, and one of the functions that you're going to use a lot is future value. So if you have never used the future value function before in Excel, when you pull up your functions, and I'll show you that in a moment, you may have to change the settings so that it'll show you all the functions. And once you find it, and then you use it, it'll be in your commonly used functions, and it'll be right at the top when you open your Excel. And I'll show you that. But right now, what you see here is just a screenshot of the Excel function future value. So you can tell which function you're using because it's in the corner here. FV is future value. And so the rate is the interest rate or the discount rate, the compounding rate that we're talking about in the particular problem we're working on. The number of periods is the number of periods of time that investment is going to be held. The payment amount is where you will enter a recurring series of payments. So a recurring series of payments of equal amounts for a specified amount of time is called an annuity. So when you do your reading this week, you'll see that. So when there's an annuity, you'll enter that amount into the payment box. Sometimes there isn't an annuity because you're only talking about a single payment amount. Now, when you're talking about a single payment amount, you'll enter that in the present value box here. The type box you're usually going to leave empty. The only time you're going to use that is when you have a problem that tells you it's an annuity due, or it says that the annuity is at the beginning of the period. Then you'll put a 1 in that type field, but normally you'll leave that blank because you'll just assume it's an ordinary annuity and the payment's at the end of the period. So let's look further at Excel. Let's look at that. Some people may not be familiar with it, so we're just going to go over some problems because I went through that pretty quick. So we're going to go to your textbook, and I'm going to look at Financial Planning Problem 4. So if you'll grab your textbook and look at that, you are going to see a short problem there. And it says that a family spends $48,000 a year for living expenses. If prices increase by 2% a year for the next 3 years, what amount will this family need for their living expenses after 3 years? So we're trying to determine, based on an amount we have now, which is a present value, and a compounding interest rate, which is the 2% growth per year, and 3 periods, we're trying to determine how much money we'll need to live for after that 3-year period. So let's have a look-see. Let's take down all the information we got from that problem. The present value we got was $48,000. The interest rate was 2%, and we have 3 periods. So here's how we will use the future value function. We're going to go and select FV. Now, this is what I was mentioning a moment ago. If you've never used this function, it may not be listed here under the most recently used. If you don't see it, all you have to do is change this to all, and then you'll search for, we're doing future value. And there it is, FV. Click OK. And so now the next time you use Excel functions, that will be in there in the frequently used. So here's how we use this function. The rate, just like it sounds, we're going to put the rate in there. The number of periods, we're going to put that in there. And the payment amount we're leaving blank because we don't have a recurring payment happening. We're just trying to find out how much a single amount is going to grow. So the present value is this $48,000. And so Excel tells us that our future value is $50,937.98. That's how much $48,000 growing by 2% for 3 years will come out to in the future. Let's take a look at another problem just to get some practice on doing this. Let's look at problem 12. So I'm grabbing my textbook to problem 12. Calculate the present value of future cash flow. So we have a financial company that says they're going to give you $60,000 now in exchange for annual payments of $10,000 you're going to receive over the next 10 years. So you've got some money coming in an annuity for some reason because you're going to get $10,000 a year for the next 10 years. But instead of waiting for that money, maybe you want to just get a lump sum of cash right now. And so this firm is willing to do that for you. They will be happy to give you $60,000 today in exchange for your future payments for later. So maybe you need money now and you're willing to do that. But let's see if they're giving you a fair value. So you're going to receive $10,000, and we have determined that the time value of money is 10% in this case. So we got 10%. And for 10 years. You'll get $10,000 for 10 years, and you believe your money can grow at 10%. So we're going to find out what the present value of those future payments are. So we're going to select PV. We're trying to find the present value. And we've got 10% as the rate, 10 periods. And in this problem, we're going to use that payment field because we're going to receive a series of $10,000 payments for 10 years in a row. And so Excel tells us very quickly that your 10 payments of $10,000 at 10% growth is worth $61,445 today. So they would be cheating you if they only gave you $60,000. They aren't giving you the full value of the annuity. So you would turn that deal down. I think I have time for one more. Just getting more practice with using Excel to solve these problems. And it looks like I'm going to go to problem 14 here. Oh, problem 14 is going to use a different function that I haven't talked to you about yet, and I'm going to show it to you right now. So this is going to figure out a loan payment. Problem 14 says determine a loan payment. If you borrow $8,000, so let's take that down at 5%, and it's going to be repaid in 5 periods. Got a percent in there. Okay, it's going to be repaid in 5 periods. So we're trying to find out what would the payment be. So Excel has a function that'll do that for you, and it's called PMT for payment. So just similar to the others, we're on the PMT function, but we're going to put that rate in, the number of periods, and we're going to put in the present value. And it tells us, well, we can pay that off by paying $1,847.80 for each of the 5 payments. And then it'll be paid off in the 5 periods. So those are some examples how to use your Excel. The boxes, pretty self-explanatory: rate, number of periods, present value, future value, and when you see the PMT, that means payment. Let's look at a little summary slide. Okay, so using Excel, you're going to use the future value, or the FV function, when you know what today's cost is. So if you know what it is today and you're trying to find out the future value, that's when you'll use FV. You also have to have the rate and the number of periods. You can use it for annuities by putting the amount in the payment box, or on a single amount by using the present value box. You use the present value, or the PV function, when you know what the future cost is, or you know some future amount you're going to receive, and you're trying to find out what the value of that is today. You still have to know how many periods away you're going to receive that money, and you have to know what the rate is, and then you can calculate what the present value is of some amount that you'll get in the future. And again, you can use that for annuities or for a single payment amount. You also have this PMT function that I just showed you. When you already know what the future amount is, and the present amount and the rate, you're trying to find out what the monthly payments would be, or the annual payments would be, then you can use that payment function. And it requires the same information, except you don't have the payment. And then another function I didn't have time to show you, but it works in a similar fashion, is rate. When you know everything else, you know the payment amount, the future value, the rate, or the present value, the future value, and the payment amount. What you don't know is the rate. Excel has a rate function, R-A-T-E, that you'll find the same way as you found the others, and you'll plug in all the information that you have, the present value, the future value, and the payment amount, and Excel will tell you what rate that was that you were getting on your money. So once you use one of these functions, you can kind of use all of them because they're very similar and it's uniform how Excel has that set up. So hopefully this will get you started on how to use Excel. If you have any other questions about how to use Excel to make your calculations for the actual homework problems that you have, feel free to drop me an email. I'll be glad to help you.